My friend borrowed $1,000 from me and disappeared. A few months later, I saw him on Facebook bragging about his new phone. I posted his photo in the comments with the caption, "Bought with my money." People bombarded him with questions. 2 days later, he wrote to me to pay back the debt. With interest. My best friend thought he could steal from me and get away with it, but he had no idea who he was messing with. It all started with trust. Blind, naive trust. I had this friend. Let's call him Derek. We'd known each other since college, shared late-night ramen, complained about professors, even celebrated each other's birthdays when no one else showed up. He wasn't just a friend. He was family. Or at least, that's what I thought. And when family needs help, you help, right? So when Derek came to me one evening, panic in his voice, saying he was short on rent and his car had broken down, I didn't hesitate. He asked me to lend him $1,000, said he'd pay me back in a month, maybe 2 at the latest. I had some savings, nothing fancy, just enough to cover emergencies. But because it was him, I transferred the money instantly. He sounded relieved, thankful, even swore on his mother's life that he'd pay me back. Spoiler, that was the last genuine conversation we had for months. At first, it was silence. No texts, no calls. Then, when I reached out, he'd respond with excuses. "Work's been tough. I'm figuring things out. Don't worry, bro, I'll get you back." You know the script. Weeks became months. And then, I stopped hearing from him at all. He blocked me on social media, ignored my calls, vanished like a ghost. But here's the thing about betrayal. It's not just about the money. It's about the insult. I wasn't his bank. I wasn't his ATM. I was his friend, and he treated me like disposable trash. That stung more than the missing $1,000. And just when I had nearly written him off, fate handed me the sharpest knife to twist back into his smug little lies. One lazy Sunday, I was scrolling through Facebook, doom scrolling, really, when suddenly, a familiar face popped up. Derek. Oh yes, the Derek who had no money for rent, the Derek who had vanished without a trace, suddenly reappeared. But this time, he wasn't hiding. He was showing off. In one photo, he was holding the latest iPhone. In another, he was at a club with bottles lined up, grinning ear to ear. And my personal favorite? A picture of him captioned, "Work hard, play harder." Work hard. Please. The only thing he worked hard at was lying. And as I scrolled, the rage built. Not because of the money, I had already accepted that loss, but because he dared to rub it in my face. He thought he was untouchable, safe behind a screen, flaunting a lifestyle funded by betrayal. That was the moment something inside me clicked. The betrayal, the arrogance, the smugness, it all boiled into one burning thought. It's payback time. Now, here's where most people would rant online, maybe leave a passive-aggressive comment, or just block the guy. But not me. No, I wanted something bigger. Something that wouldn't just sting Derek for a day but would leave a mark he'd never forget. I knew Derek's personality. He lived for validation. His entire identity was built on clout. Likes, comments, admiration from people he barely knew. His Facebook posts weren't just pictures. They were trophies. And that was exactly where I'd hit him. So I saved one of his shiny new photos, the one where he was holding his brand new iPhone, smiling like he'd just won the lottery. And then, I crafted a comment. Simple. Devastating. The kind of truth that slices deeper than any insult. I wrote, "Bought with the $1,000 you still owe me." And then I hit post. For a second, nothing happened. Just silence. Then, the storm began. Notifications lit up like fireworks. His friends, his co-workers, even his relatives started commenting. "Wait, what? You owe him money? Is that true?" Some laughed, some demanded answers. The more they pressed, the quieter Derek became. His perfect image shattered in real time, and I sat there, sipping coffee, watching it all crumble. This wasn't just revenge, it was public humiliation served cold. And the best part? That was only the beginning. So tell me, If your so-called friend stole $1,000 from you, disappeared, then reappeared bragging about his luxury purchases, what would you do? Would you let it slide, or would you burn everything he'd built, just like I did? The moment my comment went live, I didn't just sit back and wait. Oh no, I was warming up for the next act. Because anyone can embarrass someone online once, but real revenge, true, unforgettable revenge, requires patience, strategy, and a little theatrical flair. And Derek. He had absolutely no idea the storm that was about to hit him. At first, Derek tried to play it cool. I watched from the shadows, well, more like from my phone, comfortably nestled on my couch, while he typed furiously, deleted posts, blocked people, and unblocked people, all in a desperate attempt to regain control. Every action he took made my amusement grow. The man who had treated me like an ATM was now panicking like a deer caught in headlights. I could almost hear him muttering under his breath, "It's just a joke. It's just a joke." But social media doesn't work like that. Once the truth sneaks into the spotlight, it grows legs, and suddenly everyone is involved. His friends were tagging each other in my comment, some daring him to respond. People he didn't even know started messaging him privately, asking for the real story. Derek was scrambling, sweating through every reply, crafting half-truths, bending reality, trying to explain away what couldn't be explained. And all the while, I was grinning. I knew better than to confront him directly at this stage. The most satisfying part of revenge isn't the face-to-face clash, it's watching the carefully constructed chaos unfold naturally, like a trap snapping shut. So, I went silent. I stopped commenting, stopped sending him messages. I became the ghost in the system, the invisible hand that had started the avalanche but now let gravity do its work. Then came the escalation. You see, $1,000 isn't just money, it's leverage. Derek had spent months pretending he had nothing. Now he was forced to reckon with everyone knowing the truth. His credibility was in pieces. People at work, his neighbors, even the small circle of friends he thought he could trust, were now questioning him. How do you afford all this? Wait, you still owe him? Are you serious? I'd see his replies in real time, short, defensive, almost pleading. It was delicious. But I didn't stop there. Oh no, I had more in store. I began subtly nudging the story into different corners of his life. A mutual acquaintance who didn't know the full story asked me for confirmation. I casually sent screenshots. A family member who was friends with both of us posted a vague, knowing comment about responsibility and paying back what you owe. Slowly, Derek's world shrank. Every carefully curated image of luxury he had posted started to look like arrogance built on lies. I'll admit, there was a thrill in crafting the perfect timing for each post and comment. It's an art form, really. Not too fast. He needed time to panic, to flail. Not too slow. Momentum is everything. I watched, calculated, and struck when the effect would be maximal. And the irony? Derek had always prided himself on his intelligence. He considered himself clever. Now, he was outwitted by someone he thought he had underfoot. The tables had turned completely, spectacularly. Days passed. Derek's frantic attempts to regain dignity grew more erratic. He posted vague apologies online, claiming there had been misunderstandings. But the damage was done. People who had admired him now questioned his honesty. Some laughed. Some were furious. Every notification that pinged on my phone felt like a tiny explosion of justice. And I had to admit, I felt a small thrill, a dark, almost cinematic satisfaction. Then came the subtle, yet brilliant, final touch for this act of revenge. I noticed he was starting to get messages from people offering advice on how to handle debt, repayment, and personal accountability. I didn't even have to interact. The whispers, the curiosity, the probing questions, they all flowed directly from the seeds I had planted. Derek had become the protagonist in a story of his own embarrassment, written entirely by his own hubris. But here's the kicker. The most satisfying part of revenge is when your target knows exactly who orchestrated it. They feel your presence like a shadow, and every move they make is haunted by it. Derek didn't know how much I had done, who had seen what, or how far the ripple would go. he was trapped in a web of consequences of his own making, yet oblivious to the puppeteer. And that, my friends, is pure, unadulterated joy. And so, while he scrambled, deleted posts, and attempted to negotiate his way out of public shaming, I prepared the next move, the one that would make him finally face the reality of what he had done. I didn't have to rush. The beauty of revenge is that it unfolds on your timeline, not his. I waited. I let the tension build. Every day, I watched his panic deepen, every small misstep magnified by the chaos I had unleashed. And the cruelest part? He still thought he might escape unscathed. He still hoped he could charm his way out of the mess. But I knew better. I had all the cards. Every lie he had told, every excuse he had used, every smug photo he had posted, it was all ammunition now. And when the time came, it would all come crashing down like a perfectly executed symphony of retribution. By the end of that week, Derek's confidence was shattered. He avoided social situations, muted notifications, and for the first time in years, didn't post about his new gadgets or weekend adventures. He was a ghost in his own life, a man haunted by the consequences he had ignored for so long. And as for me, I sat back, sipped my coffee, and smiled. Justice doesn't always roar, it whispers first, then strikes. And now I ask you, if you were in my position, watching someone who had betrayed you stumble helplessly while the world questioned them, would you stop there? Or would you keep pushing until they truly understood what they had done? By now, Derek was spiraling. The small cracks I had left in his life were widening into full-blown chasms. Every friend, every colleague, every casual acquaintance he thought he could rely on was questioning him. The carefully constructed illusion of wealth, confidence, and charm he had spent years building was now crumbling like a sandcastle against the tide. And the funniest part? He didn't even realize I was orchestrating it all. I had been patient. Revenge, I had learned, is a slow burn. Immediate payback is satisfying in the short term, but the real thrill comes from watching the chaos unfold with surgical precision. Derek's every move now fueled my plan, his desperation becoming the perfect accelerant for the next phase. He was panicking, yes, but he was also predictable. And predictability is a weapon if you know how to use it. I decided it was time to escalate. So far, I had exposed him publicly online, let whispers and doubt spread, and watched him flounder under scrutiny. That was just Act 1. Act 2 was about confrontation, but not direct, not yet. Oh no, the best revenge is like a trap. The prey walks into it willingly, completely unaware. And Derek, proud, arrogant Derek, was about to do just that. Started with a little digging. I had seen a pattern in his posts, his tagged locations, his casual boasts. I knew where he went, what he liked, even the small habits he didn't think mattered. Armed with this knowledge, I began planting subtle reminders, like a shadow whispering just at the edge of his vision. Mutual friends, cryptic questions, a casual, "Hey, remember the loan you owe?" dropped innocuously in the comments of posts he thought were private. And then came the brilliant twist. Derek had always been obsessed with reputation. The thought of being called out publicly, of losing face in front of his peers, terrified him more than anything else. So I leveraged that. I didn't just want him to acknowledge the debt. I wanted him to feel it, to taste the fear, to realize that every little lie he had told, every excuse he had made, had led him to this inevitable humiliation. I started by sending messages under the guise of concerned acquaintances, people who had noticed his lifestyle but weren't sure about the truth. "Hey man, is it true about the money you owe?" I saw the comment online. "Just curious." These were small nudges, seemingly innocent, but each one added pressure, building tension in a way that was almost unbearable. Derek's responses became frantic, erratic. He tried to charm, to deflect, to intimidate, but the net was closing, and I held every rope. Then, the perfect setup. Derek had a routine, the local cafe he frequented every morning, always sitting in the same spot, always checking his phone obsessively. I arranged for someone, an anonymous ally, a friend who didn't even know the backstory, to mention the debt casually while he was there. Nothing aggressive, just a passing comment loud enough to be overheard. Derek froze. His face went pale. Every eye in the cafe seemed to lock onto him, and in that moment, I could almost hear his internal panic screaming. But the masterpiece wasn't just in the public humiliation. No, it was in the subtle personal torment. Derek had built a life on appearances, on seeming control. I began sending him small reminders of the loan, photos of receipts, screenshots of messages he had sent, little nudges of accountability he couldn't ignore. Each one was calculated to make him squirm, to eat away at his confidence. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about principle, about turning his arrogance into guilt, fear, and finally, desperation. And then it happened, the climax. A mutual friend, someone Derek respected, reached out on Facebook Messenger. "Hey man, I just saw the post. Is this true about the $1,000? Derek's hands shook as he typed a reply. The conversation spiraled, and soon, multiple friends and acquaintances were involved. His web of lies collapsed in real time. Each attempt to explain, to charm, to distract, only dug him deeper. By now, the public pressure, combined with the private torment, had him cornered completely. His online presence dwindled, posts were deleted in haste, friends whispered, co-workers avoided him, and the once proud, confident Derek was reduced to a man haunted by his own actions. And me. I stayed invisible. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to confront him. Watching the dominoes fall, each piece crushing his ego a little more, was more satisfying than any face-to-face encounter. Finally, after days of chaos, Derek reached out to me, not with anger, not with excuses, but with a simple, almost trembling message. I'll pay you back. Every cent. And here's the kicker. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking for mercy. The same person who had vanished, flaunted his ill-gotten luxury, and laughed in my face was now on his knees, metaphorically speaking, begging to make things right. And I smiled, not because of the money, but because justice, true and unrelenting, had finally arrived. Revenge isn't just about retribution, it's about balance. And in that moment, the scales had tipped. Derek understood, at last, the consequences of his actions. The smug, arrogant facade was gone. What remained was a man humbled, aware that every lie, every betrayal, and every false smile had led him here. And now, I leave you with this question. If you had the chance to orchestrate a perfect, untraceable revenge, one that would make someone finally confront their own actions, would you do it? Or would you let karma take its slow, imperfect course? Derek thought the storm had passed. He believed the worst was over. By now, he had made arrangements to return the money, reluctantly, nervously, and with a humility I didn't even know he was capable of. He imagined that once the debt was repaid, life would go back to normal, and he could quietly rebuild his tarnished image. How wrong he was. You see, real revenge doesn't just end with a debt repaid. Real revenge is an art form. It's a symphony of humiliation, exposure, and satisfaction that crescendos only when your target finally realizes the full weight of their actions. And Derek was about to experience that crescendo, whether he liked it or not. It started with a seemingly innocent message. I reached out under a casual pretense, asking how things were going, pretending to be friendly, the kind of friend who forgives easily. He relaxed. He believed the worst was behind him. That was my opening. I didn't need to threaten him. I didn't need to confront him. The tension I had built over weeks, through social exposure, whispers, and subtle nudges, was about to collapse in a spectacular final act. I revealed the next piece slowly. Derek had boasted about a new job opportunity on LinkedIn, hinting that he was finally getting his life back on track. That's when I leveraged it. I reached out to his potential clients, casually, politely, as an anonymous concerned party, and shared what I knew, the outstanding debt, the manipulation, and the arrogance he had flaunted online. Nothing slanderous, nothing illegal, just the truth, laid bare. And then I waited. The reactions were instantaneous. Derek's supposed clients started asking questions. Some were polite, some were incredulous, others downright confrontational. He scrambled to respond, fumbling through explanations, but each reply only made him look guiltier. The very people who had admired him now doubted everything he claimed. His credibility, already fractured, began to shatter entirely. But the real masterpiece of this act was still coming. I knew Derek's weakness, his pride. He had always been the sort to showcase wealth, gadgets, vacations, and status symbols. That image had been carefully curated over years, and it was fragile. One more calculated move, and I could shatter it completely. So, I orchestrated a public post. Not aggressive, not insulting, just the truth, wrapped in irony. I shared a photo collage, Derek holding the iPhone, his bottles at the club, the exact receipts he had flaunted online, overlaid with a single, simple caption: the $1,000 investment that changed everything. The response was instantaneous, explosive. Comments flooded in, disbelief, mockery, and incredulity. People tagged friends, shared it in groups, and even co-workers of Derek's began asking questions. His social media, once a curated paradise of confidence, had turned into a courtroom where every lie and every boast was being dissected publicly. And Derek, he was watching it all happen, helpless. Every notification, every ping, felt like a hammer striking his ego. It was then that Derek tried to salvage himself, desperation dripping from every word. He posted an apology, claiming misunderstandings, claiming that he had meant to repay sooner, and even tried to frame some of it as exaggeration. But the timing, the evidence, and the public eye were merciless. No one believed him. His explanation seemed hollow, desperate, and utterly pathetic. I watched it unfold with the satisfaction of a maestro conducting a symphony. Every action Derek took only amplified the impact of the previous moves. Every friend he lost, every message he ignored, every nervous reply, all contributed to the crescendo. And then it happened, the moment of pure, unadulterated climax. A mutual friend, someone Derek respected deeply, posted publicly, "Wow! I can't believe this. Derek, I thought better of you. How could you do this?" And the floodgates opened. The comments section exploded. People who had only known Derek superficially were now scrutinizing his every action, wondering if their trust had been misplaced. His world, his carefully constructed image, was imploding, and the beauty of it was that I didn't have to lift a finger anymore. The avalanche I had started was now fully autonomous, unstoppable, and utterly devastating. Derek's face, when I finally saw him in person, was a mixture of disbelief, shame, and fear. He had never anticipated the depth of the consequences, the total unraveling of his reputation, and the precision with which I had orchestrated it. It wasn't just about the $1,000 anymore. It was about accountability, about a lesson he would never forget, about showing that arrogance and betrayal have consequences far beyond the initial act. By the time he reached out to me again, this time personally, humbly, with a sincerity I had never seen in him before, he was a changed man. Every boast, every lie, every smug smile had been stripped away. And in that moment, I realized that the ultimate power of revenge isn't cruelty. It's justice, wrapped in irony, executed with patience, and delivered with absolute precision. So, the climax wasn't just in the exposure or the humiliation or even the repayment of the debt. It was in the transformation. Derek had been forced to confront not only what he had done to me, but what he had allowed himself to become: arrogant, careless, and utterly vulnerable. The satisfaction wasn't in watching him suffer. It was in seeing him recognize the truth of his actions in a way he would never forget. And now, the question I leave with you: if you had the chance to craft a revenge so perfectly executed that it humbled someone completely, exposing lies, arrogance, and betrayal, would you have the patience to pull it off? Or would you settle for the small, immediate payback and leave the masterpiece unfinished? By the time the dust settled, Derek was no longer the man I had once considered a friend. The arrogance, the braggadocio, the smug confidence that had defined him for years, they were all gone, replaced by a cautious, calculating, haunted version of himself. And I had watched it all unfold with the patience of a predator and the satisfaction of someone who had seen justice delivered with precision. But the story didn't end with a single victory. That would have been too simple. Real revenge, the kind that lingers in memory long after the money is repaid or the insults are forgotten, leaves ripples. Consequences that continue to remind the culprit that nothing escapes accountability. In the weeks that followed, Derek tried to rebuild. Social media accounts went dark, public posts stopped, and he even attempted to repair relationships with friends who had distanced themselves. But the damage had been done. The echoes of that $1,000 betrayal and the public spectacle that followed haunted every interaction he had. People didn't forget so easily. Friends who once admired him now treated him with a polite distance. Colleagues raised eyebrows at his presence, and even casual acquaintances looked at him differently. The world he had taken for granted, the carefully curated persona of success and charm, had been irreversibly altered. And every time he tried to reclaim it, he was reminded of the reckoning I had orchestrated. What fascinated me most was watching his psychological unraveling. Derek, once so confident, now overanalyzed every message, every invitation, every casual gesture. The smallest hint of ambiguity sent him into spirals of doubt. Had he been honest? Was someone talking about him behind his back? Was he being judged for the smallest misstep? The paranoia was deliciously complete, because it wasn't forced, it was earned. Every miscalculation, every lie, every corner-cutting decision had led him here. And it had taken nothing more from me than strategy, patience, and a deep understanding of human behavior. And yet, there was a curious irony in all of this. Derek had believed that by flaunting a new iPhone, a few nights at the club, and an air of untouchable confidence, he could escape accountability entirely. But the very traits he had relied upon to impress and intimidate others became the instruments of his undoing. His pride had been both the engine of his arrogance and the catalyst for his fall. And I had merely been the mirror reflecting it all back at him. Weeks later, I received a message, not demanding, not pleading, but oddly reflective. It was from Derek. I never thought I'd see the truth so clearly. I understand now. You were right. The words were simple, almost understated, but the weight behind them was unmistakable. He had seen the consequences of his actions, not as abstract morality, but as a tangible reality that touched every part of his life. And for me, that acknowledgement, silent, humbling, irrevocable, was the ultimate validation. I didn't gloat. There was no need. Revenge, when executed to its fullest, doesn't require boasting. Its impact is self-evident. Derek had experienced it in full. Public humiliation, personal anxiety, social ostracism, and finally, the quiet, internal reckoning that comes from realizing that your own decisions created the circumstances you now suffer. And the most satisfying part, he couldn't undo it. He couldn't erase the evidence, rewrite history, or reclaim the trust he had broken. Every action he had taken was a permanent scar etched into the fabric of his life. And yet, there's an unexpected twist in stories like this. The one delivering revenge often finds themselves changed, too. I discovered a strange clarity in patience, strategy, and the meticulous orchestration of justice. I realized that revenge isn't just about retaliation, it's about understanding human nature, observing patterns, and acting decisively when the moment is right. There's a power in knowing exactly how far to push, when to remain invisible, and when to strike. And in that knowledge, I found a quiet, almost meditative satisfaction that had little to do with anger and everything to do with balance. But life, as it always does, moves forward. Derek continued to live, but cautiously, measured, aware that every misstep could have consequences far beyond the immediate. He was a changed man, humbled not only by my actions but by his own inability to act with integrity. And I, having watched the complete unraveling of arrogance, betrayal, and pretense, could finally close the chapter with the knowledge that justice had been served. Not violently, not illegally, but completely, ruthlessly, and inevitably. And yet, there remains a lingering question, one that gnaws at the edges of every story of revenge. When someone has been humbled, taught the weight of their own mistakes, and faced the consequences of their actions, is the story truly over? Or does the memory of the reckoning continue to echo, shaping both their life and yours in ways that can never fully be undone? That's the brilliance of revenge. It leaves ripples, lessons, and shadows long after the act itself. So I leave you with this. If someone betrayed you, vanished with your trust and money, and then flaunted their new life, would you stop at simple exposure? Or would you orchestrate a precise, unrelenting symphony of consequence that teaches them what they refuse to learn themselves? Would you let it unfold with patience, strategy, and a touch of irony? Or would you settle for a fleeting moment of satisfaction and leave the lesson incomplete? Revenge, after all, is as much about the story you leave behind as the punishment you deliver. And Derek's story, once one of arrogance and betrayal, is now a cautionary tale, echoing through the lives of everyone who witnessed it, reminding them that actions have consequences, and that sometimes, justice finds its most powerful form not in fury, but in meticulous, unstoppable patience. And so I ask you one final time. If you had the chance to orchestrate revenge so perfect, so inevitable, so utterly transformative that it reshaped a person's life forever, would you have the courage to see it through? Or would you let the world take its slow, imperfect course and hope that karma finds its way?